Good afternoon. Welcome to the State Department. Early afternoon, my apologies. We're a little bit late getting started today, but usually is the case on a Monday, unfortunately. Anyway, over to you, Matt.
You have nothing to start with?
Nothing to start with.
Really? You're not going to give us a thrilling recap of the Secretary's adventures today? No?
Well,
all right, well then, if you're not going to do that,
as you know, the Secretary was in Prague earlier today, is now...
But actually, I do have a question about Prague, but it's
on her way to Brussels.
It's going to be the second question.
Okay, go ahead.
First one is, let's start with Syria. So, can you explain exactly what the red line here is? Is it the use of chemical weapons, or is it movement, just solely movement? Because the President was not entirely clear. I don't think he mentioned both, but now it seems to be what the Secretary said today was the use of. So that's. So can you explain to us what the actual red line is?
Well, the President, if you're looking for the President's exact words,
and also tell us why there is this increased concern now.
The President said, I believe, any use or proliferation of chemical weapons by the Syrian regime would cross a red line for the United States, was his exact wording. So if you're looking for clarification on that,
So it's use.
Use or proliferation of chemical weapons.
So they either have to use it or sell it before you guys would, or that's the red line. Using it, selling it, or giving it away.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So can
again,
you say why this is now a more?
I'm not going to get into obviously specifics here. We've been very clear that we are monitoring the situation very closely, but I'm not going to get into any specifics beyond that. What we've been very clear about, though, is that, as we said, any use or proliferation would be crossing a red line, and we would take necessary steps or actions.
The Secretary, as you almost said, was in Prague today. The Czechs are your protecting power. I'm curious in Syria. I'm wondering is this message being delivered to the Syrians directly through them, or is it just being delivered in comments like the Secretary's and yours and others?
Well, obviously, the Secretary mentioned in her remarks earlier today that the Czechs obviously play a leading role in dealing with these types of chemical weapons and are an important partner, obviously, not only in that regard, but also with us as a friend of the Syrian people. So, in any of our consultations, we talk about all of these issues. It's natural that they would come up. But, I think, in her public remarks, she was obviously responding to a question from the New York Times and saying that, we've been continuing to monitor the situation and we're looking at it very closely and we're concerned and very clear that if any use or proliferation of these weapons would cross a red line.
I'm sorry, maybe you misunderstood. The question wasn't whether you would talk to the Czechs about it. The question is whether you've asked the Czechs to talk to the Syrians about it on your behalf, since they are your protecting power.
Again, I'm not going to. Oh, sorry, I apologize. In any case, again, I'm not going to talk about specifically what we may be asking the Czechs to do on our behalf. We are sending a very clear message, however, to the Syrian government. Saeed? Or do you have another question?
I want to know is that message being delivered in any other forum than just public comments from Secretary Yu and others?
You know what? I'd have to look into that, Matt.
Considering that Syria is a non-signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, are you certain they have chemical weapons?
Again,
or is that just presumed?
No, we obviously, base a lot of our base our knowledge on intelligence, but I'm not going to get into specifics.
Okay. Do you think the Syrians are manufacturing their own chemical weapons, or they are importing it from, let's say, Russia or elsewhere?
Well, again, I'm just not going to get into any specifics about their chemical weapons program, only that we are concerned about any move that might signal that they are somehow ready to use those chemical weapons on their own people.
Yeah, and I have a couple more on Syria.
Yeah, sure.
The United Nations just announced that they are withdrawing non-essential staff from Syria. Could you comment on this development?
I'm sorry, who?
The United Nations is withdrawing non-essential staff from Syria. They just announced that.
Well, I mean, it's obviously, an indication of how tenuous the security situation, the security environment has become in Damascus, as well as in other parts of Syria. We've talked about the escalating violence We've talked about the fact that the Free Syrian Army and the rebels appear to be making territorial gains. It's just a further indication that Assad's grip on power is slipping.
So, do you have at least some knowledge of the area or the vast area that the rebel army is controlling now?
You're talking about? Am I going to walk you through the?
Yeah.
Look, we've seen there that they have the capability now to actually to hold on to various territory. I don't have a map behind me. I don't have specific areas to show you. Well, I do, but it's not very good on Syria. It's not very accurate. I can't get into specifics about what territories they may or may not have.
Okay, so lastly, if they do have a large swath of territory, would you recognize the coalition as a government in exile or as a temporary government, whatever?
I see now where you're going with your questioning. We've been very clear, and our position has not changed, that we see the SOC as a legitimate representative of the Syrian people. That remains. We have seen them, since their initial formation, take the kinds of steps that we're looking for, organizational steps, trying to organize themselves better, both globally but also on the ground within Syria, and those are encouraging.
Mark,
yeah, sure. Go ahead,
the red line, but what would happen when the Syrian regime crossed it?
Again, Secretary is very clear that we're not going to talk about what may or may not happen. Just we're very clearly communicating that that would be a red line.
Are there American troops in the area, in the region, ready to interfere in case?
Again, you're asking me to get into specifics and operational details I wouldn't discuss from the podium. Go ahead.
Can you give us a readout about the Secretary's meeting last Friday with Mr. Brahimi and Deputy Burns meeting with him today?
You know what? We did promise you that readout. I think Toria did on Friday, and I apologize. I don't have it, so I'll try to get it for you.
Two things, Mark. Just one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm glad to hear you use the word sock.
Sorry.
Thought I was the only one.
No, I apologize. Actually.
Secondly, can you repeat the line that you said?
The Syrian Opposition Coalition. I should never cite an acronym without citing its full title first.
No. I'm glad that you used it.
You've rubbed off on me.
Can you? You said any move. You're concerned about any move that might signal. Can you just repeat that line?
I don't know what line I'm repeating here. I think we said that it would signal that they're either moving towards the use or.
You were concerned about. So, has there been such a move? I'm trying to figure out why exactly, other than there being a story about it in a newspaper this morning, there is this increased concern. Has there been some kind of a move that might signal that they are getting ready to use them?
Well, I think what we've been saying is that as the opposition makes strategic advances, grows in strength, the Assad regime is obviously unable to halt their progress through conventional means. So we're concerned that with an increasingly beleaguered regime, that it having found an escalation of violence through conventional weapons is not working, that it might seek to up the ante, as you will.
Okay, fair enough. But that doesn't necessarily mean you've seen a move towards that. I'm curious to know if there has been a move, or are these expressions of concern today just the standard ones that you would have had 3 weeks or a month ago?
I can't get into any specific information we might have about that. Other than that, we just continue to monitor the situation.
Do you consider the stockpiles to be secure?
Again, we're monitoring them, so in that sense, it's hard to say in Syria today that any stockpile of any weapons is secure, but we're continuing to monitor them from any movements or otherwise that might indicate that they're moving towards the use of these weapons.
But that's a little bit of a movement. In the past you've said the weapons are secure, and we continue to monitor the situation. Now you're not saying that they are secure.
I think I was just putting it in the broader security perspective in Syria, and we say very clearly that the rebel forces are making advances. The Syrian regime is growing increasingly desperate.
Yeah, Andy. After all these reports, the Syrian Foreign Ministry came out and said that they had no plans to use chemical weapons. Do you think that Syrians or others should take those assurances at face value?
Yes.
So you do think they?
No, I'm
you
sorry.
believe-
I think we duly note that. Sorry about that. I think we would, duly noted. However, this is a regime that has perpetrated months, years, in fact, of violence against its own people.
Okay, just sort of related to that, there were reports that your counterpart, or one of them in the Syrian Foreign Ministry, Mr. Makdisi, has defected. I think it was fired or B, defected. Do you have any information or reaction to that?
I can't confirm those reports. I've heard them and seen them, but obviously, it's as we've said many times in the past that we're starting to see people peel off from the regime as the situation grows increasingly desperate.
And by losing a foreign ministry spokesman, do you think that would be
It's a vital part of any government, I think. Is
In fact, the most important position in any government.
speaking from my direct experience. Go ahead.
Any fear that the rebels may get a hold of chemical weapons or any other WMDs?
Well, I think without getting too specific, that's something that we discuss with the Syrian Opposition Council. That as they make advances, what they would do in this case.
Can I just follow up on Brahimi?
Yeah, go ahead.
On his meeting today. Last Thursday he told the press in New York that there is going to be a need for after he addressed the closed session of the Security Council, there may be a need for a multinational peace force. Did he discuss this issue?
Yeah, Toria mentioned this and spoke to it on Friday. I mean, before we get to any multinational, peace force or peacekeeping force, we need to get the peace. We need the fighting to stop, and we need, obviously, for a political dialogue leading to a political transition to begin. So, it's too early in the process for us to.
With the situation being as tenuous as it is, do you think that he's going to stay in for the long haul, or is he following in the footsteps of Kofi Annan?
That's a question you're going to have to direct to him in the UN. Yep.
Go back to the rebels and the WMDs.
Sure.
You talk with them about not getting their hands on, or if they do, how to secure them, or
The latter, and I don't want to get into too much detail. Yeah, we done with Syria?
Okay. North Korea announced that they were going to launch a satellite in December, between 10th and 22nd. So when did the United States government know that they were going to announce that they were going to launch?
Well, we don't generally give a timeline of our interactions with North Korea. I think what's important here is that they've announced their intent to engage in a provocative action, and as you saw from our statement, we condemn what we consider to be a highly provocative action that would threaten peace and stability in the region.
One follow-up. Tomorrow, Japanese and South Korean directors on this issue coming to D.C. So, is there going to be a trilateral meeting tomorrow?
I don't have any announcements to make. Once we have a firmer idea of, we'll let you know.
In the past on this subject, you have on occasion told us about communications through back channel. Have there been any communications either prior to or subsequent to the North Korean announcement, i.e. direct communication between Pyongyang and you guys?
I'm aware that we have in the past acknowledged some of these things. Yes.
So they, can you tell us if that?
But I'm not going to get into any greater detail than that.
And you can't tell us whether it's before or after the announcement?
It was prior to.
Prior to.
Yeah.
So you had some forewarning. They told you directly before they made the public announcement.
Again, I'm not going to get into details. I'm not going to give a timeline
But that's
here.
a true statement that they told you before they made a public announcement.
Right.
Did you confirm that North Korea fired, is this satellite or ballistic missile? What is the?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Is a satellite or ballistic missile, long-range missile?
Well, as you know, it frankly doesn't matter. The technology is the same, and we, under no illusions that they're somehow pursuing, a space program. It's pretty clear what they're trying to do here.
What countermeasure does the U.S. have on this? Do you have any countermeasure?
What confirmation that they're going to launch? They've said that they've said it so publicly. I'm sorry, what?
Countermeasures.
I'm sorry, the question one more time?
Does the U.S. have any countermeasure on this North Korean side?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking, though. Countermeasures to keep them from launching?
Yes.
I'm not sure what you're getting at. I mean, we're obviously we view it as a provocative action, and we're working with other members of the six-party process and consulting going forward.
Mark, can I just say, how do you know North Korea doesn't have a space program?
Well, I'm sorry. What are you asking me to evaluate?
I'm just trying, because you said something, and I think it was kind of offhand earlier. You said it's pretty clear what they intend to do. We know they don't have a space program. That, one, how do you know they don't have a space program? Maybe they do. And two, and they've just kept it secret. And two, would it matter if it was for a space program? It wouldn't, right? It's still banned. You said
my point was the technology is the same.
So it doesn't matter whether it's for a space program, a bomb, or a satellite, or I don't know, shooting a monkey into space. It doesn't matter what it is.
Again, the technology is exactly the same. That said, we're highly skeptical that this is about the peaceful civilian use of outer space. Yeah, Saeed.
Yeah, the Israeli settlement on the West Bank.
Yeah.
You just issued a statement.
We did.
And you say, quote, "We have made clear to the Israeli government that such action is contrary to U.S. policy." Did you make that by a phone call? Did you call the ambassador like Britain and France did, or how did you do that?
Well, you saw what we did. We put out a public statement.
Okay, so do you plan on calling the Israeli ambassador to the building and tell him in person?
Again, I'm not going to get into what additional actions we may take. I think our statement was pretty clear in expressing our opposition to this announcement.
Okay, are there any kind of coordination between you and your allies on this issue, between, let's say, you and Britain and France in this case?
Well, I think there's obviously we all share the same sentiment, excuse me, which is that we consider these kinds of actions, these kinds of unilateral decisions to be counterproductive and make it harder to resume direct negotiations. I mean, obviously, we continue to consult closely with our allies and partners on how to get both parties back to the negotiating table. But I think our reaction is similar to their reaction, that this is not the kind of action that we need to see.
Could you spell out a little bit? I mean, your statement mentioned specifically concerns over this E1 zone. And saying it's particularly sensitive and might make things more difficult. Can you tell us anything more about what your specific concerns are about potential construction in E1?
Well, again, I think it's generally known. I think that that this particular area, construction there, would be damaging to efforts to achieve a two-state solution for geographic reasons. That these are all issues that need to be settled through direct negotiations.
And so when you say for geographic reasons, you have specific concerns about the sort of future integrity of a Palestinian state?
Those are some of the issues that have been raised, yeah, or concerns. Again, what's important that these are all issues that need to be resolved at the negotiating table in any kind of comprehensive settlement.
Are you aware of any action in Congress to slap sanctions on the Palestinian Authority?
On any actions within Congress? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that they've, again, I know that there's, or I'm not sure that there's any kind of draft legislation at present. You're talking about in reaction to their move
exactly
in the UN General Assembly? You'll have to ask Congress.
Has there been any kind of, did you contact the Palestinian Authority post-vote, kind of, on Saturday or Sunday or Monday?
Well, I think the Secretary saw Prime Minister Fayyad on the margins of the Saban Center on Friday.
Mark?
Yeah, go ahead and back, and then I'll get, yeah.
On Iran?
I'm sorry, you have another Israel. Okay, go ahead.
Are you going to discuss this issue through the quartet, or?
Well, I think my point was we're obviously consulting closely. We always do on these issues with the quartet. But we've spoken very clearly about our feelings about this recent announcement. He's still in?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I'll
get to you in a second.
Because, as you have said yourself, the Palestinians get the vote in favor of the Palestinians at the UN on Thursday didn't change, and it doesn't change anything on the ground. And the announcement by the Israelis on Friday would have substantial, significant impact on the ground, at least, so I'm wondering if you think that the tit for tat that we saw go on here was proportional.
Matt, Toria talked about the fact that we need to be even-handed. We believe we are being even-handed when we see actions that we deem or we believe are counterproductive to what everyone professes to be the ultimate goal here, which is, a comprehensive settlement, two states living side by side, that the only way to get there is through the negotiating table, and any action that impedes that effort is, we believe, counterproductive.
Well, but I'm just curious because when you say even-handed,
so my point is,
can you
Matt,
point to any success so far from the even-handed policy that you had? I mean, you've told the Palestinians not to go to the UN. They went to the UN. You've told the Israelis not to do to announce or do more settlements.
Well,
and they
again,
continue
Matt,
to do it. Neither side is listening to you.
Well, I think what we've seen here is, and we talked about this in the lead up to the UN vote, which is that, what we don't want to see is this kind of response from the Israelis. But this is something that is, obviously we warned about with the Palestinians, pursuing this vote.
So, where does that? Where does that leave you? You're supposed to be the honest broker here, and neither side listens to you.
Matt, these are difficult issues. This is a difficult process. If we're easy, it would have been settled long ago. But we need to be consistent, and we need to be clarion in what we say about our belief that these kinds of actions, whether they're through the Palestinians and whether it's these announcements by Israel, don't get us any closer to what both sides profess to be the ultimate goal here, and what we want to see as the ultimate goal, which are two states living side by side in peace and security. Yes, sir.
Follow up
Go ahead.
Samir's question on the quartet. Nabil Arabi, the Secretary General of the Arab League, said that he's going to call for dissolving the quartet. Has he discussed this issue with you? Or
I haven't seen those reports. I'll look into it, but I haven't seen those reports.
Do you agree with him that the quartet really has outlived its purpose?
Again, we continue to work very closely within the quartet. Obviously, David Hale remains very engaged with his quartet partners, but I don't have any particular comments to that report. Yeah, in the back.
State Department's Facebook account in Farsi has mentioned there is going to be some changes in the regulation or the process of Iranians acquiring visas. Can you tell us more details on that? How the changes are going to be? What changes?
You know what? It's an excellent question. I don't have any details in front of me. I'll have to look into that. Can you give me a day to look into it and get back to you?
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, you in the back.
Hi, my name's Kyle Nomi. I'm with TV Asahi. Kyodo News Agency reported Sunday that Iran has stationed defense staff in North Korea since late October, apparently to strengthen cooperation in missile and nuclear development. Do you have any comment on this?
I don't. I've seen those reports. You're talking about reports that there's Iranians in DPRK?
Yes.
I don't have any comments other than that we've seen reports in the media. Obviously, Iran is, we've expressed our concern before about Iran continuing to play a nefarious role globally, but specifically to those reports, I don't have anything to add. We done?
Egypt?
Yeah, Egypt, go ahead.
Reports that alert that Iran is really softening its position. Do you agree? Has there been any signs, as far as you're concerned, that Iran is really backpedaling on the nuclear issue?
That Iran is backpedaling?
Yeah.
If you're talking about the comments by Foreign Minister Salehi earlier today, we've made clear in the past that we're open to bilateral discussion within the context of the P5+1. We've been very clear that we're prepared for such a conversation. We want to see Iran show its seriousness to engage.
Is it bilateral or P5+1?
Well, I said within the context of the P5+1, but we've always said we'll engage in bilateral talks. We talked about this. I believe it came up during there was a New York Times article a few months ago about this very issue, and we've always said there's nothing new here, that we will engage in bilateral talks. We're open to that within the context of the P5+1 process.
means discussing the P5+1 targets.
I'm sorry?
Bilateral meetings, but discussing the P5+1 targets.
Again, there's a P5+1 process. We're all united in our desire to see Iran address the international community's concerns about its nuclear program. That's obviously the process that's in play here in order for Iran to address the international community's concerns. But within that context, we're willing to talk about these and other issues bilaterally. Yeah, go ahead in the back.
Cuba. I know you issued a statement earlier on Alan Gross. Can you read some of the statement out? Sorry, it's TV. And why now? Why suddenly pick up this case for Alan Gross?
Well, again, I don't know if I have the statement in front of me, but obviously, the reason why we issued the statement today is to mark the third year of his incarceration, his unjustified imprisonment in Cuba. Obviously. We want to see him released unconditionally. We believe, as I said, he's being unjustly held. He was there in Cuba as an aid worker working with the Jewish diaspora community there, helping them to better communicate through the internet to the outside world. He's done nothing wrong. He's also has some serious health issues. We'd like to see a physician of his own choosing be able to come and evaluate his health. And finally, on purely humanitarian grounds, he should be released to visit his mother, who I believe is terminally ill with cancer. So for all of these reasons, we just want to call attention whenever we have the opportunity. And indeed, we raise this case whenever we have the opportunity with the Cubans that we believe he needs to be home yesterday.
Two questions about the Senkaku issue. I guess there's been a legislation introduced in the Congress to call on the United States to back the Japanese administration of the Senkakus. Does the State Department have any reaction to that? That's the first part.
You know what? I haven't seen that draft resolution. Sorry, I've got serious speaking issues today. I haven't seen that draft legislation. So I'm not going to be prepared to comment on it. You know where we stand with regard to the Senkakus. Our position hasn't changed.
And then the second part is about Assistant Secretary Campbell's comment a few weeks ago about his comment apparently was that this is an issue that cannot be resolved but can be managed. And my question is, I'm confused about this because if it is the position of the State Department that these islands are part of the Japanese administration, what is it that has to be resolved? And is he really talking about managing tensions more so than resolving the central issue?
Well, again, I just would say that our policy hasn't changed with regard to the Senkaku Islands. I'm not going to get into details. I don't have what Kurt Campbell said in front of me. I haven't seen his remarks, but we remain committed to finding, to working through diplomatic channels to resolve these tensions. Yeah.
North Korea again. Is there any direct dialogue between the North Korean and your government to stop the missile launch? Direct dialogue right now.
Direct dialogue with North Korea?
Yes. North Korea and your government.
The process is such that we work, obviously, with our partners in the six-party process, and that's what we're doing now. We're consulting with them.
There was some news reports that your government and the North Korean official meet in New York through the New York channel.
Again, I don't have anything to add to what I've just said. Yeah, sure.
Do you have any comment about this incident in which Vietnamese are accusing Chinese fishing boats of sabotaging a seismic survey team?
Again, I've seen those reports just before coming down here. I don't have any particular comments on them. We just don't know. We don't know the details yet. But obviously, you're talking about this is in the South China Sea. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we continue to support a collaborative diplomatic process to resolve the disputes over the South China Sea. As to that specific instance, I don't have any further comment. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Question on Pakistan, following on the Secretary's meeting today with the Foreign Minister. The United States currently has no reconciliation talks ongoing with the Taliban, but there are separate talks with the core group that includes Pakistan and Afghanistan. Do you see those efforts up to this point being helpful in sort of resolving the issue?
Well, I think I think we saw last week that there were meetings between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Obviously, we've welcomed that kind of cooperation. We want to see greater dialogue between them. Obviously, our role as well as Pakistan's role is the same. We want to see an Afghan-led reconciliation process, and I think that we would view any kind of dialogue between Afghanistan and Pakistan that furthers that ultimate goal to be very positive. And certainly that's our goal, is to play a facilitative role in this process. Is that it? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any concerns now that it looks like the situation is really deadlocked?
Well, I mean, yes, I think we've been very clear where our concerns lie in this process. As you mentioned, it's very clear that many Egyptians have strong opinions about the new constitution, the draft constitution rather, and the process by which it's approved. There will be a referendum, as you guys saw over the weekend, that's going to be called for on December 15th. It's important that we believe that referendum be monitored by impartial observers to ensure that it's fair and credible. And obviously, the other critical element of this is that it's important for Egyptians to be able to exercise their right to vote in this referendum in a peaceful and secure environment.
The judiciary refusing to supervise this, as the law says.
Well, I think right, according to Egyptian law, but I would clarify, I think I've seen competing news reports that say they may, in fact, oversee this referendum. So I don't know what the ultimate outcome is, but, as according to Egyptian law, these types of referendums must be overseen by the country's judges. But I'm not clear that they've said they're not going to do that.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.